And I thought, that's cool. I never met him, but I love the fact that he had the guts to, rotate from what his dad's big plan was, and that he had identified his compass, which was, there was no precedent for, which is to go off. And this was in the first sociology professor at Cornell, and he co-authored the first sociology textbook in this country. It's like, that's cool. So even though I never met these people, the fact that it was in my lineage and I heard stories about it, not a lot of stories, but when I look back on it, that empowered me. It made me think, oh, I can go to Stanford. I look back, it never occurred to me that I wouldn't go to graduate school. And so that's a gift my family gave me that, in retrospect, you say, wow. And then and community leadership, there were just a variety of people in my life who I saw that, they just would kind of cross the line and get involved in the community in different ways. And I thought, well, they can do it. I didn't mean, there's something, when I was talking to some friends about this, they said, you have to believe that you can influence these things to act. And I guess I took some of that for granted, at least on the scale that I've chosen to influence, which is really more on as Sherry would say, more on a community level, I think. It's where I'm happy. Finally, just make it my environment, the fact that I have had the privilege of going to Stanford twice for graduate school. That's an interesting recipe. 2 years of Stanford graduate school, out in the work environment for 3 years, 2 years back. It's like a cooking thing of, do you cook for a long time? And I had two very different, the first graduate experience I had was in the School of Earth Sciences, and I was in a graduate program with 6 students. And my core advisor was a guy named Dick Johns, who had just rotated off being dean of the school, and we were his last graduate students ever. And so that's a real twilight advisory experience with someone who's looking at this last batch of students and saying, I'm going to have some fun with them. I'm as good as I'm ever going to get. And he had a great sense of humor, and he made learning a wonderful experience. And that's a graduate experience that's like a family, when there's only 6 of you in a program. Then you go to the business school, so you fast forward a little, with huge respect for and affection for the business school on a relative basis, that is a little more like a factory experience. There's a class of 350 coming in. And in my geology experience, there was a research component. In the business school, it is a deep immersion experience. And when I came for my geology master's degree, I was already a geologist, so I was just doing the next step. When I came to the business school, I was really a fish out of water. I was the weirdo geologist with all these people who had been doing investment banking and management consulting. But I still found some flippers and swam with them, but that was an interesting process. So probably won't spend too much time on these slides, but I just made slides for each of these words to really reflect on and make sure I kind of drove them home for you or talked about them a little bit more. So when I met my partner, Steve Hall, who helps me run our firm, and I told him about our business, about MAP and what we do, he said, you're like out of this book written by Jim Collins called Good to Great. And I've never read Good to Great, which I'm a little embarrassed about yet. But apparently one of Jim, who used to be a professor here at Stanford, one of his real premises, it's fundamentally about leadership, is about this word focus. And that was a conversation I had with my partner 5.5 years ago when he joined me. If someone interviewed me the week after I graduated from Stanford Business School in 1987, which many people, they didn't officially interview me, but they kind of were probing me like a bug in a dish, because I was like this weirdo geologist who'd gone to Stanford Business School. So there was like this fascination with, so how was that MBA, or what did you learn, like, did you survive, or whatever? And I said, well, I learned what retained earnings were, because I had no idea when I started. And I said, and then what I said over and over, I must have said 200 times, early after business school, and people asked me that question, what did you learn? I said, I learned the word focus. So somewhere in the case studies that we did, in strategic management classes, that my big takeaway, I would say, well, I learned the playful part, I learned about retained earnings, because I had no clue what that was. And I would just say over and over again, I learned the word focus. And then my aha afterwards, and I met amazing people. So if that was my way to sum up my GSB experience, those were the words. And so here I am playing. If any of you walked into my office at MAP, I have this sign, basically, except it's tilted the other direction. It says focus, focus, focus for emphasis. So people who walk in my office are like, ooh. So I think, as I said before, focus has to do with clarity about what you're trying to do. And That's probably 25% of it, and 75% of it is clarity over and over again every day about what you're not going to do. That capacity to say no. And classic areas for focus creep are trying to build out a platform of activity rather than just do one thing and doing it really well. In a lot of things, so when we started Community Impact, it was, are we just going to solve, so geographic creep is a very defocusing activity. So when I think of, building out multiple products, whether they're educational products, whether they're corporate products, whether they're nonprofit products, and taking on more geography than you can handle can be classically defocusing. And I think the scale. I think in all the things I've done, I've tried to draw a circle and say it's quality, not quantity, we're trying to achieve. And the natural human instinct is to try and make things really big. So in a lot of cases, those are really successful. Because I'm more of a niche and cranny person, that fit really well with saying, let's try and do things, really keep our arms around them and do them as well as we can. Passion is my next, just for emphasis. I think passion could fall under drive, vigor, tenacity. I wanted to make the distinction, three thoughts kind of came to mind also when I thought about passion is, it's one thing to be very passionate yourself, and anything you're trying to do, it's like, if you can't be passionate about it, you should go find something you are passionate about. Otherwise, you're kind of, to be really blunt, you're wasting your time. Upon reflection is, I guess, the way I would view it. I think, and part of the reason I'm so clear on that, because my parents, I've now outlived my father by 3 years, and my mom died at the age of 30. So I grew up with the sense that life was really short. So I really had this discipline around, I only want to do things that I can get excited about. And I think, again, people who bubble into the Stanford world they may have had different crucibles that got them to that place, but I bet everybody in this room feels that way as well. But I wanted to distinguish, internal passion is one thing, but if you can't communicate it and create passion or tap into that passion in the people that are on your team, you don't have anybody to lead. So to me, passion has that double dimension of keeping your own compass aligned on the word, but making sure that you are spending the time you need to inspire, attract, feed, and connect into the passion of the people working with you. And the last thought about it is it has to be authentic. If you're trying to fit yourself into something and say, well, maybe I can be passionate about that, you got to give yourself a certain amount of time, and if you can't get passionate about it, again, I would urge you to change paths. Risk and reward. I guess you do have to be comfortable with the idea that it might not work out the way you hoped it would. And I guess that's something I've been prepared to deal with. But that also has to do with the scale of the challenges I've taken on. So I just believe that life is about continuing to venture. And if you stretch yourself, but I do it in a very focused manner. So a lot of what I'm doing, and the thing, these three organizations, if you will, that I'm talking about, I've been doing all three of them now for almost 20 years. And so all I keep doing is taking more risk within the existing vein that I committed myself to once I proved it up. And I'm finding it's too defocusing for my personal life to take on more. And really today, Hands-On Bay Area, I had to detach myself from Hands-On Bay Area / Community Impact to be able to do MAP and what I'll call sustainable energy education in my teaching, and to do my family at the standard of quality that I wanted to do it. So I think, I've been focused really having three legs to the stool, which is my family and my friends, the sustainable energy commitment, and running my investment firm. So, and we all have different tolerances. There are people who have more capacity than I do, and some who probably have less. Team. So I've talked a little bit about this. You got to be able to attract people. So you have to have enough charisma, passion, all those things, and be able to clearly articulate what you need so that you get people aligned that fill the thoughts on your team that you need to have. And then you need to be able to inspire them and bring out the best in them. And so I'm recognizing all this. I got to tell you, I don't necessarily get an A+ at all these things I'm saying you need to do. I do the best I can. And again, reflecting all this is making me think, well, maybe I can be a little better at some of these things. And the teams I've worked with have really varied. So I have student teams of people I work with. I have investors that I work with. I have colleagues at MAP I work with. And when I was working in Hands-On Bay Area, it was almost all volunteers working together doing things. So again, those different settings. In my case, I liked having those different portfolios of kinds of people I was working with. For other people, you learn I only work well with students maybe, or something like that. Or I only work well with athletes. Or we all have to figure out what makes sense for us. And most of you have probably been exposed to the Harry Potter books, but I really like using the metaphor of the sorting hat. That whatever organization you have, whether it's the organization at the Vice Provost's office or the organization in the department you're in, or if you're building a company, part of it is figuring out what is our culture? Who are we and how do we like to operate? It could be what our dress code is. What's the level of respect we work with? Are we a flat organization? Are we a hierarchical organization? And then, so it's, again, important to profile that and then to bring in people that are comfortable with that profile. And you'll have the most successful hiring and partnering if you can be as clear as possible kind of about who you are as a leader, and therefore your organization, again, if it's 3 people or 2 million people, whatever it is hopefully a reflection of your leadership style, but you have to be able to articulate it to match people up against it. So I like the sorting hat metaphor because it's not that one kind of person is better or worse than another, it's just aligning people. And I guess when I think of team, a really important word, after a lot of experience I've had, is trust. Work with people you trust. Try it. And how do you assess that as you're evaluating whether you can work with them or not is a tricky process sometimes. But being able to trust people and have fun with them are vital. There's a lot of words